meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York town. Oh, the butcher and the baker and the people on the streets, where do they go? To meet the
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another Mets Hot Stuff Live on all the channels. You guys are watching right here on all the channels. Nelson, Chris, 3/4 of the Roundtable podcast. We are going to bring you all the latest Mets news and everything else that we have to talk about today. The chat is already booming with people talking about Stearns being at small market Stearns and Wilpons 2.0 and all that fun stuff that we like to hear as Met fans. And, of course, Mets Twitter. And if you watch the Bader and Sevi press conference, the comment section was perfect. It was just exactly what I expected. And before we get into the main topics that you see on your screen, I'm going to save it up to you, Chris. Save it up to you, Nelson, and then we'll get to the press conference with Bader and Sevi. Chris, what's up?
What's up? I appreciate you guys. Always good to be on here. Appreciate you setting this up. Check out the podcast, check out the channel. Almost to 400 subscribers, about 14 away. So help me get there. Any help would be appreciated. Going live on the True Mets Talk podcast tomorrow, and we'll be live on the Interstate Mets Report on Friday, talking all things Mets. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Check out all the content that I have on my channel. A lot of Mets videos up this off season. So if you haven't checked it out yet, make sure you subscribe and check it out. So I appreciate it. Looking forward to this conversation.
Absolutely. And Nelson's not wearing a down jacket right now, so I guess he's inside. What's up, Nelson?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't watch my videos for the Mets content, you can enjoy me braving the elements. I'm a regular Jim Cantori out there with the wind. I mean, it felt like I was gonna get blown away, and I'm a big dude. That's hard to do. So that was interesting. But yeah, check out my channel, Amish Country Mets fan. I try to put out a video almost every day if I can. And the weather's supposed to get worse, and I'm going to be out there. So if you don't like my takes, you can at least enjoy me freezing to death. It's always fun. Good to be here with you guys. And yeah, let's talk a little Mets.
Absolutely. And Ibby's in the chat, and I want to give a shout out to John and Ibby. They did the interview with Terry Collins. That was an awesome interview. Terry's a great interview. Terry's a great guy. I met him at the QBC. He's the guy that is not afraid to say what's on his mind. And, he jokes, he laughs at himself. And I always love people that laugh at themselves. I laugh at myself all the time. I know most people do, but laughing at yourself and, put yourself in the middle of a joke is always fun. And that was a great job by John and Ibby interviewing Terry Collins. So, guys, let's talk about the press conference of Severino with the beard. I guess he's happy to have a beard. And Harrison Bader press conference was today, and David Stearns was a part of it as well. And I know the comment section was insanely crazy, and people were laughing. And Wilpon 2.0, cheapskates, David Stearns bringing small market team to New York. But I like what Severino had to say in regards to what he thinks he can do to stay healthy and what he's working on. He's working on He's working a little bit more on a sweeper. Harrison Bader talked about he has Met fans in the family, and they both had the Mets hat on, and that was cool. But let's start with David Stearns had to say before we get into our main topic. David Stearns, right off the bat, and a great job by Mike Puma, by the way, asking it right away. It was like the third or fourth question, asking, is Harrison Bader going to be the center fielder, and is Nimmo getting moved to left field? Well, according to Stearns, pretty good chance that Nimmo's moving to left field. And for a person that is not the biggest fan of Brandon Nimmo, and I said this that he's a better corner outfielder and would suit this team better if the Mets have a better defensive center fielder. And Harrison Bader is that guy. Granted, he has to stay healthy. And that first comment or quote from David Stearns was shocking to the whole section of comments and the people that were watching that stream. But Chris, I'm going to start with you first. I thought this was always going to happen. They started, even under Epler, they started to bring Nimmo to left field over the last couple of months to protect him from injury. It's not a lot to hide. You can't hide it. Nimmo in his entire career was injury prone, except for the last 2 seasons. He's only getting older, and Nimmo has gotten better in center field based on analytics and what analytics helped him become a better center fielder. But he can become a probably well above average, if not great, left fielder, in my opinion. So, what are your comments and your opinions about what David Stern is saying, that Harrison Bader is most likely going to be our regular center fielder and Nimmo's going to left field?
Yeah, I thought it was definitely something that we definitely expected when Harrison Bader signed, right? I think the writing was on the wall in the tail end of 2023 when we saw Brandon Nimmo start to play a little bit of left field, kind of foreshadowing what the market was going to be in terms of a free agent acquisition this offseason. This is the perfect bridge signing. I know we're not here to talk about Harrison Bader and what he brings to the Mets team with his glove and his bat, but this is the perfect bridge signing for the young guys coming up. Not only do you have Harrison Bader on a 1-year deal, he will not be a Met presumably next year. You have Starling Marte. His contract is starting to expire as well. So when you talk about guys like Drew Gilbert, a guy like Jet Williams, depending on what happens with Luis Angel Acuna, Jet Williams can play a little bit of outfield too. Those guys starting to get more reps in the outfield. I think those guys are definitely going to be slotted in. This is something that we've been talking about time and time again. Brandon Nimmo has a weak arm. He's probably meant to play that left field spot because of all the 3 outfield positions, center field, right field, and left field is usually reserved, just generally speaking. Now, this is not always the case, but just generally speaking, for the weakest arm. So I think it's a smart decision. Brandon Nimmo's defense has gotten extraordinarily better since we've seen him come up with the Mets. It's been night and day difference, and having that range on the left side, the left center gap with Brandon Nimmo and Harrison Bader is going to be a huge positive for the New York Mets. David Stern stressed defense up the middle. Lindor, McNeil presumably at second base, and then Harrison Bader. That's a nice little trio defensively up the middle on the diamond. So I can't wait to see what happens. But like I said, let's not act like Harrison Bader is going to be playing every single day for the New York Mets. This outfield is set up to be a platoon outfield. So when Harrison Bader has a day off, which he's presumably going to get a lot of, given his health concerns, his injury history, Brandon Nimmo will be playing some sort of workload in center field as well. So this is not goodbye to center field for Brandon Nimmo. I just want to make sure everyone's clear on that. But this is definitely a positive for the Mets in 2024, and a positive for the young kids coming up. Like, they have to be seeing this. Drew Gilbert has to be seeing this and smiling from ear to ear because the Mets are taking him into consideration with these direct moves, and I love it.
Yeah, and Chris, we said it in the group chat. I thought the same thing you thought. Drew Gilbert, Jet Williams, right away in that aspect that they're setting it up for next year. One of those guys being in center field full time. It's just that was the first thing
Absolutely.
I thought of. And yeah, and I agree. And listen, you got to keep these guys healthy. This is not going to work out if you don't keep these guys healthy. And it's hard to not look at 6 or 5 years out of the 7 for Nimmo, knowing that he's injury prone. And you got to keep him healthy because he is a leadoff hitter. He is a spark plug. He's a guy that gets on base. We need him in the lineup. You can't have him getting hurt because there's really nobody better than him right now on the Mets, and you have to have him in this lineup. And I even put together a nice little lineup earlier just to see what it would look like right now with this roster. And Nelson, let me get your comments, your opinion about this with David Stearns saying that Bader's going to play center field, Nimmo's going to get moved to left. What was your thoughts about that? Were you shocked? Were you excited? Were you like, thank God Nimmo's out of center field? What's your thoughts?
I wasn't shocked at all. Makes the most sense. It's why not have your best defensive alignment out there when Bader's playing? Like it other than I guess maybe because you want to justify the contract for Nimmo. I really don't understand why not just put him in left field if Bader is healthy and playing, because that's your best alignment. You got to put your best team on the field. So
Yep.
that's the bottom line. Like, that's all it comes down to, putting your best guys out there. Unless, I mean, it may all be a moot point. Bader may play like 75 games again, and it might not matter. Like, let's be real. I don't have a problem with the Bader signing, but the problem in general is that these guys aren't particularly healthy. I mean, Nimmo has proven that he can stay healthy the last couple of years. Hopefully, he can keep that up. But Bader, man, he hasn't had a full healthy season in years. So hopefully he does. Hopefully he stays on the field and he's the best center fielder. He can't hit, but maybe we get something out of his bat. I like the idea of the speed he has in the 9-hole. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, defensively, it makes the most sense. If everyone's healthy, you put Bader in center, Nimmo in left, and you roll with it, because that's the best defensive alignment.
Yeah, and I agree. And again, every GM, every organization goes on the merit of being healthy. Nobody goes into there with saying, "Oh, well, what if this guy, that guy, and that guy, are injured?" No, not one person, Epler or anybody in the organization last year, saying, "Well, what if Scherzer goes down? What if Verlander doesn't pitch? What if this guy goes down and that guy goes down?" You can't plan for every type of scenario. You only got 26 guys on a roster. What you can plan for is saying, "All right, we know." And I always like a defensive center fielder, and I think what Nimmo showed last year with the 270 average, 24 home runs, he offensively sits as a corner outfielder. The corner outfield is where you want your power / offense from. Your center fielder doesn't need to be, the greatest offensive player. Your center fielder should be, in all likely, a defensive minded player. And then whatever offense you get is where, you are. Again, you're not going to have 1 through 9 power hitters and offensive juggernauts. It's, the Braves are an anomaly, but if you really look through, 7 through 9, they were rolling out Rosario and guys like that. Like, they were, rolling out great guys. You're going to have 220 hitters. You're going to have guys with 7 home runs, probably some speed. Harrison Bader is going to be in the 8th or 9th hole. And when it comes to everything that Chris and Nelson said, yeah, it is the best defensive alignment. David Stearns has been saying this from the moment he took the job. Saving runs, defense. That is the one thing that he really, really was known for in Milwaukee. And let's be honest, guys, we talked about this many times on the roundtable throughout the season. The defense was a major problem for this team, particularly in May and June, where their defense was one of the worst in the league. I mean, they were throwing the ball around. They were playing hot potato with the baseball. I think that was one of the quotes I said earlier in the season. During that time, they could not play defense when it mattered most. They couldn't turn double plays at the rate that they were doing in 2022. It was just a big problem all year. And if you just think, if you save a run a game just by defense alone, you have a better shot of winning than you would if you weren't saving those runs that you would save. And I think that's important to realize. Like, everybody just looked at the offense and saying, "Well, you got to score runs. You got to score runs." Yeah, well, you can't give up 5 runs a ball game, and the defense has a lot to do with it. And if you put your best defensive team out there, and you still got Nimmo, you still got Lindor, you got McNeil, you got Alonso, that's your core. That's the core. If those guys don't perform, you're not winning. It's just that simple. There's no mistake that Nimmo had a really good year. I'm one of the guys that, like, damn, he proved me wrong offensively for the most part with power and everything like that. But, if Pete Alonso hits 45 home runs and goes back to that 250 average, the Mets are going to be better. If McNeil goes to the 300 average again, the Mets are going to be better. If Marte shows us 50% of what he's shown in 2022, it's automatically a better offensive player that you're going to have in right field, and so on and so forth. You just assume Alvarez is going to be that 25 home run guy, average wise, we'll see, and then, that's 5 or 6 guys in your lineup already. 7 through 9 in most teams are a crapshoot. Like, let's be honest with that. So let's get into the main topics. The Mets have $10 million left, guys. I didn't know if you noticed. Andy Martino, the great reporter that he is, saying the Mets have about $10 million. But he also said in that same sentence, it's not a hard cap. So what he's telling you, that's his opinion, not a report. That's his opinion. And again, if the Mets have $10 million, and if that's true, Chris, if that is true, then you're going to see what we just seen in what's his name? Yaskel something, right? Yaskel Rios. What's his name? Yaxel Rios, who the Mets signed to a minor league deal. You're going to see more of those type of deals. I don't believe that one bit. I think it's more of his opinion. It's another way to entice the fan base and just piss them off even more, Chris. So what do you think of the $10 million left on the budget? Do you believe it?
So I will say this, like Andy Martino is not my favorite guy, but I will say that he is on SNY for a reason. He foreshadowed the Luis Severino signing the day that it happened earlier on. I do believe him with a grain of salt. I will say that and caveat that I don't believe to the full extent that $10 million is that hard budget, because he did backtrack, to your credit and to his credit. He did backtrack shortly after he said 10 million. He said, well, roughly around there. So that tells me anywhere between maybe 10 to 17 million is what we're looking at. And in this market, that really is penny pinching in terms of going out there and getting more than one guy, right? Even one guy is going to be a tough task with that sort of number. So do I believe it's 10 million? No, I don't, because if you all are tuning into the True Mets Talk podcast, I said this team needs to upgrade 3 to 4 more roster spots to be where they want to be at, even in this bridge year. Like, even given that this team is a fringe wildcard team and that's the expectation to be competitive, we're not going to go win a division. But 3 to 4 position groups need to be upgraded even still. 2 relievers, a DH, and maybe a starting pitcher via trade. That's my sort of perfect scenario for the rest of the offseason. So I'm a little concerned with that report coming out because, like I said, as much as I don't like Andy Martino and the way that he reports with bias for the New York Mets versus how he reports for the New York Yankees, we all know that to be true when Andy Martino speaks on those two teams. I will say that he does have insider sources. He does have that knowledge to speak on that sort of topic. Now, like I said, I've been saying it all along. David Rios in the chat here, shout out him. I've been saying on my True Mets Talk podcast, go back and check it out. I dropped it on my Twitter account. This smells like David Robertson to me. This smells like a reunion for that 8th inning setup man and David Robertson. Now, if the Mets truly believe that they need 2 more guys and not just one, then maybe we're going to see the Yaxel Rioses, or however you pronounce his name, Yaskel Rioses of the world, because this market is just absolutely insane. It started with Lance Lynn making, what was it, $10 million a year. Giolito just further proved it, and Sean Manaea is making $14 million a year. So this market, this offseason, is absolutely inflated, which is going to make that the Mets' job that much harder if that's the hard budget. But like I said, if there's a situation where the Mets like a guy, they are having serious negotiations with him in his camp, and they're a little bit over that $10 million budget, I find it hard to believe that they won't pull the trigger on a second signing to go maybe 17, 20, 22, somewhere around there. But are we going to go and get, go and spend 30, 40 more million dollars like we're accustomed to seeing the New York Mets do the last couple of off seasons? I highly doubt it. I highly doubt it. So take Andy Martino's report with a grain of salt, but I will warn you all with a little bit of caution that I do think that that ballpark at least is somewhat realistic of an expectation to sort of see for the rest of the offseason. So let's monitor that.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with you. Like, there's a budget, no matter how much money you have, depending on your type of business. But I think if the player's right, if they think it's the right move, and I think if David Stearns walk into Cohen trusts David Stearns. If Stearns walk into the office and says, "Listen, we can get Wandy Peralta and David Robinson, and it's going to cost us about $30 million," I think Cohen's going to say, "Fine, go get it." I think it has to be the right move at the right time, and exactly what players Stearns believes that is worth that type of money, no matter if we agree or not. Stearns is trusted by Cohen, or he would never hire him. He tried him to get him for 3 years now. So, Nelson, what do you think about the $10 million budget? Do you have any a piggy bank that we can help the Mets get another reliever or two? What do you think about that?
Listen, I mean, let's be real. The Mets, maybe they truly just that's the amount they want to. They don't want to spend any more than $10 million. But at the end of the day, Steve Cohen is still Steve Cohen. If he wants to spend more than $10 million, he will spend more than $10 million. I just don't think there's anyone out there that they think is really worth the money. They have a plan. Whatever plan that is, they believe in it, and they don't see certain players as being worth what they're asking for. I get fans might not like it, but it is what it is at this point. They've proven it time and time again. They're doing it with the bullpen. They keep signing minor league deals. They're just they have a type of pitcher they're looking for, guys with high velocity and sweeper sliders. They have like that's their game plan. The starting pitching market, they had one guy that they thought was worth a ton of money.
Yeah.
They didn't sign him. Everybody else, they were like, you know what? They're not worth it. They went with a cheaper deal on Minaya, counting on his upside. Severino, they're counting on his upside. DH, if you listen to the press conference, it really sounds like he's more than willing to just roll with in-house options at DH. I've said time and time again, I wanted a DH, so that's a little disappointing.
Yeah.
But I understand it. If you want to maybe use the DH as a role to like keep Marte off his feet a little bit, use Vientos, see what he has, and actually evaluate him with real playing time. Because let's face it, Beatty and Vientos haven't had a ton of games to really evaluate. Like we're making evaluations on very short, very small sample sizes. So if that's the case, if that's what they want to do and they don't want to spend, then yeah, $10 million ain't gonna get you anything. I said it in my video earlier today. $10 million, the bums of Major League Baseball have gotten more than $10 million this offseason. So $10 million, you ain't getting any actual talent. Like it's just not gonna happen. Maybe a David Robertson signs for, like Chris said, sign for around 10 or a little less. But other than that, I don't know, man. You're not getting any. It's gonna be like minor league deals and whatnot. But that's not to say, like in that same press conference, he made it seem like he's still looking for starting pitching. He didn't like fully commit to it, but he seemed way more committed to that than to getting a bat. So maybe the trade market, he's still hunting. Maybe there's a pitcher out there that he really thinks is going to really change the rotation and put us in a better spot. And if that's the case, then great. But at this point, if you're judging it by like free agent moves, I really think we might be done other than the small minor league deal here or there. Our best bet to finally get a guy that really makes a difference that might make the fans a little happy is a trade. Like I truly believe that.
Yeah, Chris.
Sorry, not to cut you off, but Stevie actually mentioned in the chat here. I want to go a little bit off topic, just a little bit. Shota Imanaga's deal just came through the full parameters. Bob Nightingale just tweeted it out. 4 years, $53 million with an option to make that 5 years, $80 million. 4 years for $53 million. That's $13.25 million AAV.
Can we
can that hurts me. That hurts my soul. And I'm not saying Shota Imanaga is going to be the next best thing since sliced bread. I'm not saying that, but when I look at the optics of the deal compared to what the rest of the market has gotten this offseason, Sean Manaea, for example, making $14 million for 1 year. I understand this is a 4-year deal, a little bit more risk involved for the Cubs being a long-term deal, but for $13.25 million a year for 4 years, for a guy like Shota Imanaga, has high upside, crafty left-hander coming over from the NPB. That is an absolute steal for the Cubs, in my opinion. Sorry, sidetrack. Just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, and I also saw a report. I don't know if it was Joel Sherman or one of the reporters. They said that he really wanted to go to the Cubs and basically took less money to go to the Cubs. I think somebody offered him around the 80 million that everybody expected him to get. So, again, this is the same thing with Yamamoto. When a player wants to go somewhere, there's really not much you can do, especially if they take less money. So, I mean, that's an interesting deal. That hurts my feelings a little bit too, because I think that's, $13.5 million with somebody with the upside. And we saw, Senga's a bargain as well. And that's another bargain that if he's not very good, well, he can be a 4th to 5th starter. If he's really good, he'll be in the top of your rotation. So, yeah. And Nelson, I wanted to what you said, that there's no reason why the Mets need to sign somebody that the fans will be happy with, because of the fact that if they don't believe that pitcher, that hitter is worth the money or worth the years, then why sign a guy just to make your fans happy? That if that goes against your philosophy and your plan, then what are they really doing? Then you know what? They might as well have a poll. Hey, who do you want us to sign? And then they go sign them. Like, there's a plan here. Might not agree with the plan. Like you said, I'm disappointed that they might not get a DH. But if that's their plan, the problem with this organization was there was never a plan. It felt like they were always throwing everything at the wall and see what sticks. They've done it for years with the Wilpons. For years they did that. There was a post on Twitter about Jed Lowry. That was our big signing in 2019. Like, we forget all that. Like, they like to throw stuff against the wall and see what sticks. And they're having a plan that a lot of us might not agree with, but it was successful in Milwaukee. And it's not being a small market situation. I think if Stearns is willing and Cohen were willing to give $325 million to Yamamoto. If they believe that guy is worth it or that player is worth it, they're going to do whatever they can to get him. That doesn't mean that they're not going to do it to every single player and give Montgomery $180 million over 7 years. If they don't believe it's worth it, then why do it? And that goes for the DHs as well. Turner, Soler, and Martinez. If Martinez and Turner are looking for 2-year deals, 3-year deals, the Mets are not doing that. They already showed you they're not doing that. And that's the whole reason why Soler is probably out of the question, unless he's willing to do a 2-year deal with like a 1-year option. That's the only thing. And we'll get into the DH a little bit more. I know I spelled expensive wrong because, I'm just so smart. I saw that in my little topic script. But hey, we'll get to that in a little bit. Wandy Peralta. He's one of the guys that the Mets are interested in. Again, minus the budget. If the budget's $10 million, then they're not getting him either. But Chris, Wandy Peralta. We need another lefty in this bullpen. Will it be Wandy Peralta? Will it be Matt Moore? It would be Loop, whoever. Would you take Wandy Peralta?
Absolutely, I'd take Wandy Peralta. I mean, who wouldn't at this point? Rejuvenated his career in New York. Last 3 seasons has an ERA in the 2s. Each of the last 3 seasons in New York over there for the Yankees. Crafty left-hander, relies mostly on his changeup and the off-speed, predominantly first and foremost, but has a 4-seam fastball that he uses around 5 to 6% of the time that can range up to 95, 96 miles per hour. Would be the perfect lefty addition for this bullpen. But like you said, if the Mets are if they only had that $10 to $12 million budget, then it's not happening. And a guy like Wandy Peralta, the seasons that he's had over there in New York over the last 3 seasons, mind you, those ERAs and the 2s that I'm talking about, the last 3 seasons, that also comes with a great sample size. Last 2 years, he's pitched over 50 innings. 2021, he pitched, I think, 42, which is okay. But like I said, he stays on the mound, he stays on the field, and he's reliable, which is what the Mets have been missing out of any position group consistently. He's a reliable left-hander, and honestly, he's a guy that I would also entrust in eighth inning duties right before Edwin Diaz. So it would make all the sense in the world, but now, given this little budgetary constraint report that we have Andy Martino, I'm not really sure it makes too much sense. Like I said, that's why I'm leaning David Robertson, because like Nelson just said, that's really the only guy in this market that I can foresee that's worth, let's call a spade, that's worth the damn, that might sign for $10 million or less. Wandy Peralta is not that. So like I said, as much as I would love Wandy Peralta on the Mets, and as much as he's proven that he's worthy to get that eighth inning sort of role, and like I said, you have a two-headed monster at that point in terms of lefties in your bullpen with Rayleigh and Wandy Peralta, which makes the signing, or would make the signing, even better. I just don't think it's in the Mets' cards if Martino's report is even in the slightest bit true. But like I said, Wandy Peralta, I don't care that he's an ex-Yankee. I don't care that Harrison Bader's an ex-Yankee. I don't care that Luis Severino's an ex-Yankee. Wandy Peralta would fit this rotation perfectly. And I've said that for about a week straight now, ever since the Mets have been slowly but surely being linked to him. So I'm not sure how true those reports are, but something to monitor moving.
Yeah, and the Wandy Peralta would be a total opposite of what Rayleigh is. Rayleigh is a guy that works on the outside corners, a lot of soft stuff, doesn't really go in on a lot of batters. Peralta goes after hitters, and he can pitch to right-handers just like Rayleigh can as well. So you're not, that lefty specialist that we used to see a lot of. So, and he throws hard as well, which is different from Rayleigh, which is a nice little difference of pitchers when you need them the most, especially in the division with Olsen and Harper and Schwarber. You need, Albies and all those guys. You need those lefty pitchers. Nelson.
Let me caveat that.
Yeah.
1 second before Nelson goes. Stoney also said a name that I've also been mentioning too. I think that a reunion could be plausible here if he returns back to his own self. Aaron Loop would also take less than $10 million. Yes. Absolutely another lefty. So Robertson and Loop, probably your only two options if this is the budgetary constraint for the bullpen market. Thank you, Stoney. I appreciate it.
Bring him in. Loop with his Bush beer and Robinson. So Nelson, Wandy Peralta or somebody else? What do you think? Left-handed.
I'm fine with Peralta. Again, it just depends what he's asking. I mean, it's possible that he gets less than we think. He's been pretty solid, so you would think there'd be teams out there interested, but with the reliever market, you never know, especially almost none of the good relievers have signed. I mean, the reliever market is still, Hicks is still out there, Hader's still out there. Obviously, Robertson, I could keep going. That dude from Japan/Cuba hasn't signed either. What's his name? Rodriguez. Yeah. He hasn't signed. Like, there's a ton of guys out there that just haven't signed contracts yet. So who knows what the reliever market shapes out to be. Maybe Wandy does fall within those parameters that we're looking for. But right now, it just really seems like we are dead set on minor league deals for guys that have, I guess, we view as having upside. So I don't know if we're going to get an actual back of the bullpen like guy that people think of as like a lockdown guy. We might not. We might just roll with what we have. Stearns has really not tipped his hand whatsoever. We just kind of have to wait and see. We're linked to guys, and then we sign someone that we never even expected. I don't think Yaxel Rios was not on my radar as a signing. If anything, there was another scrub that Shane Sons alluded to that is a lefty as well that we may or may not sign. So I was looking for that that news to roll in at some point today or tomorrow, not Yaxel Rios. So we shall see where we go from here. Honestly, at this point, I'm done guessing because everything I've guessed has been wrong. I got the Severino thing right. That's about it. Everything else has just been I don't know, just not what I expected this offseason to be. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it would have been nice to get some big names, but that doesn't always work. And I think if you really are objective about this, the New York Mets roster has improved. Whether or not it's improved enough to make the playoffs, we shall see. But they have had they've made marginal improvements. They're deeper. We just have to wait and see. I really wish we would have got a DH, but it is what it is. I mean, we still might, but
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see. If Wandy, I'm good with, and forget the Yankee BS. Like, I really don't care if the guy is going to improve the New York Mets. I do not care who he played for. There are very few guys out in MLB right now that I would not want on the Mets, no matter what, and I can count them on one hand. So I'm perfectly fine with Wandy if we get him. He would be a solid lefty to have, but if he don't, then listen, I trust the one thing I trust more than anything of David Stearns, and I'm a David Stearns guy, is his ability to build a bullpen.
Yep.
I saw it in Milwaukee. He doesn't have to do it with flashy names. He has figured out how to build bullpens. So I'm going to believe that whatever he's got up his sleeve, he knows what he's doing with the bullpen at the very least.
Yeah, and I said this. I talked to you guys in a group chat about this. 6 out of his 8 years as GM with the Brewers, he had top 5 bullpen ERAs, and overall pitching, they were always in the top 10 in overall pitching. He knows what he's doing when it comes to bullpen. He knows, and you know what? Him and Cashman find guys all the time off the scrap heap. I mean, Wandy Peralta was a nothing in St. Louis. He was in and out of the minor leagues, wasn't very good. He was in the minor league system when he traded for him from the Cardinals for cash considerations. And he was one of the better relievers in baseball and one of the better relievers in the Yankees bullpen. We have to realize that it's not about the big names. Now, closers are a different story. But other than that, it's a lot of guys that I'm telling you, nobody can name 3 or 4 guys in a Yankees or Brewers bullpen, yet they had the 2 best bullpen ERAs in baseball. Like, we have to understand that. And I think that, and I 100% agree with you. I'm not worried about Stearns with the bullpen. I think he'll be fine. And even with the starting pitching, if he thinks that there's something to this and this is the way he's going about it. Now, again, he did have Burns, and Woodruff, so it was kind of easy to, play around with the rotation a little bit. But you know what? You do have Kodai Senga. He was the second best NL pitcher ERA-wise in baseball. If he believes that Kodai Senga is the ace, go with it. That's his plan. That's okay. I don't agree with it, but what are we going to do except talk about it and bitch about it, right? So, Nelson, you also brought up the trade market starting pitching wise, and when you talk about the $10 million budget, a trade can alleviate the budget a little bit. Because if you trade and the money works out where the Mets are sending a little bit of, they might take on a little bit of money, but, a couple $1 million here or there who they trade could just, could make an even trade money wise. But, we've talked about these guys, Cease and Burns and Bieber, all these guys, Peralta. And Nelson, I'm going to start with you since you brought it up in your last comments. The starting pitching market, I still think, is the major move in this offseason is going to be a trade for a starting pitcher. I said that for a while. I don't know who it's going to be. Your guess is as good as mine. But I think it's going to happen. I think, you keep on hearing little tidbits here and there, a couple of days here, a couple of days there, that the Mets are still actively involved in starting pitcher trade market, and it's multiple reporters from all different realms. The MLB reporters, Met beat reporters, this guy, that guy, national reporters, all over the place. Do you think the Mets are going to make a trade for a starting pitcher? Now, top line starting pitcher, or do you think it's going to be another mid-rotation guy, say like, I don't know, give me a name. What do you think?
Now, I honestly think if they do pull off a trade for a starting pitcher, they're going to try to get someone that would be considered more of a top of the rotation guy. We have plenty of middle to bottom of the rotation guys at this point. Like, I really don't think we need another one. If you're making a trade, to me, it's only worth it if it's for someone that has the stuff to be at the top of the rotation. A name that I've seen come up a lot lately, and whether or not there's truth to the smoke with it, is Jesus Luzardo from the Marlins. That kid, he's young. He has good stuff. He had a phenomenal year last year. I feel like if they could pull that trade off, now I realize it's in the division, might cost a little more, but the Mets and Marlins have made deals before. Um, they're not afraid to trade with each other. If it were another team like the Braves or the Phillies, I would say probably not going to happen. But the Mets and Marlins do have a history of making deals. Um, it's going to be tough because they're probably going to want some decent prospects. So it might not be realistic, but I just bring it up because I've seen some smoke there. Their beat writer Craig Mish, I believe, has hinted that the Marlins are making a trade soon. A few of our fellow content creators have hinted that the Mets might be interested. Apparently, the Mets and Marlins talked about a deal surrounding Brett Beatty last offseason that involved either Luzardo or another pitcher from the Marlins. So there is some smoke there. We'll see. I don't know. It might not happen. It might not even be realistic. If they do want Beatty and you have to give up Beatty plus whatever, then you're opening up yourself to needing a third baseman again. So there's that aspect of it as well. So I don't know. Other than that, I mean, the only other real guy that I'd be interested in that has come up in trade talks is Cease. I mean, Burns, I guess, but I'm not the biggest Burns guy. And I really don't know that the Brewers are going to trade him anyway. The other problem with Cease, again, is cost. Like, I just don't know if Stearns has the stomach to trade a ton of prospects for any of these dudes. But we keep hearing that he's interested in making a trade. He hasn't closed the door on it. When they asked him about it, he kind of keeps hinting that he's still looking. So, and maybe that's what's taking so long is the fact that, look, if it is Luzardo, like that's a difficult deal to make. It's in division. You got to be careful. You obviously don't want to have to play a stud of the future if you trade him away in your division for years to come. So you probably maybe are a little hesitant to give up like one of your bigger guys. But I don't know. I think Luzardo would make a huge difference for this rotation. I think. I think that would solidly put us in like talks to be a playoff contender for sure. Still probably again would feel better about it with a bat, but it is what it is. So we'll see. I really don't know what the Marlins' plans are. Their offseason has been weird. They really haven't done anything. They made the playoffs and they got rid of well, they didn't get rid of her, but they what's her name? The GM president, whatever her name was. I forget.
Kim NG.
Kim. She left. They got that guy from the Rays who's supposed to be a solid dude, but they really haven't done crap. So it's an odd off season for them. Maybe they're looking to make something happen here. So we'll see what happens. But that's all, pretty much the only name I've really heard consistently lately other than Cease. So who knows?
Yeah, when there's smoke, there's fire. And again, for people in the comments that keep on saying they're not trading prospects, David Stearns never said he would not trade prospects for controllable arms or controllable pieces. He said he's probably there has to be the perfect player to be a rental. He said that. And again, we have to understand something here. We don't know what David Stearns evaluated already. He might believe that like Christian Scott might be our best pitching prospect. Maybe he thinks Hamill is expendable. Maybe he thinks other guys are expendable. And Mish, the Marlins reporter, and there was another Marlins reporter that went on the radio station in some national baseball radio station saying that the Marlins are looking for position players because they got a ton of pitching prospects in their farm. They're looking for position players. In particular, they're looking for shortstops. And the Mets have 75 of them. And by the way, Nelson, you brought it up. Brett Beatty has been the Marlins have been all over Brett Beatty for 2-3 years now, and they were willing to give up Luzardo or Cabrera multiple times with more years of control for a Brett Beatty, mostly just Brett Beatty, and like a couple of lower level prospects that probably never make the majors. But yeah, that's what they're trying to. That's what they're looking at, and Brett Beatty will be key in that deal with the Marlins, because the Marlins, no matter what we think of Brett Beatty, his stock is down. But when a team believes in a prospect, even if they have down years, teams always think they can change this prospect around. And I think for the Marlins in this situation, they say, okay, great, he can play third base. We got 5 years of control. We don't have to pay him nothing. And people are like, why would they trade Luzardo with 3 years of control? Because arbitration is getting to the $8 to $10 million range now. That's a lot of money for the Marlins. They don't want to pay that. And with the Alcantara being out the entire season, their plans are probably changed with their weird offseason. I think with Alcantara being down, as Nelson said, why they're having a weird offseason, I think with Alcantara down, they think that they can get more assets for guys that they can get assets for, and then go with it. This is what the Marlins do. And that's the point. So, and that's what I think. Chris, give me your thoughts about the trade market, and do you think Luzardo is an actual option for the Mets?
Yeah, I think Luzardo's an option. I don't think the Marlins have a plan. I think ever since Kim stepped down, they're kind of in shambles. I'm not sure that front office has a concrete plan. Jorge Soler also just went on to say that the Marlins really haven't re-engaged with him in terms of free agency. They have no interest of bringing him back. So that really shows you an all-star in 2023, had good production, 36 home runs. If they're not interested in bringing a guy like Jorge Soler back, which, that tells me, that screams to me they're not really interested in winning, or they don't really have a plan. So Jorge or Jesus Luzardo is definitely an option for the Mets. I think Brett Beatty, like you said, is going to be the key centerpiece. If you can convince the Marlins that Brett Beatty is the same player that they wanted the last couple of seasons, I think you're going to have to add on plus, though, because last year's price or the year before that's price is not going to be today's price. So add on maybe a Kevin Parada or another top 10 Mets prospect. Like, you're going to have to do that, right? Because you have Jesus Luzardo that is controllable for 3 more years. His arbitration value is about 4 or 5.9 million this season, but that's going to go up and up in the next season and the season after that before he hits free agency. 2 other names that I like: Freddie Peralta, first and foremost. I know the Mets haven't really been linked to him, but he has Milwaukee Brewers ties with David Stearns. He's only making $5 million a year on his contract AAV, and his luxury tax payroll hit is around $8 million. That is right up the Mets' alley in terms of a cheap option that can serve as your number 2 behind Kodai Senga this season and slot in as your number 3 with those multiple years of control left next offseason when they presumably go after that ace or that 2 to complement Kodai Senga. Freddie Peralta is a name that I've liked for a long time this offseason. I haven't heard any concrete reports of him just yet being linked to the Mets, but we all know the Mets. They basically come out of these trades out of nowhere. It comes out of nowhere. So keep an eye out on Freddie Peralta, even if we're not hearing that smoke, up front first and foremost right now. And another name, like I said, those 2 guys are going to be your sort of second options in the rotation behind Kodai Senga for 2024. But if they do go out there and sort of mitigate this rotation and get one of those tier C type pitchers to sort of hold them over for 1 year, I think another name in terms of the trade market is Nick Pivetta from the Boston Red Sox. I know he's got an ERA in the 4s last season. His arbitration cap hit for 2024 is going to be around $7 to $8 million as well. He's going to be a cheap option in terms of an addition to the rotation. I know the Boston Red Sox want to clear sort of cap for any sort of free agents that they have coming in. That was a report that we've been seeing. So the Mets doing business with the Red Sox is certainly not out of the question. So keep an eye out on Nick Pivetta. And like I said, if you go and trade for Nick Pivetta, obviously he's not that brand name that everyone wants. He's not a Jesus Luzardo. He's not a Dylan Cease, and he's not a Freddie Peralta. But what he is a placeholder for the year 2024 because he hits free agency in 2025. And that's exactly what it seems like the Mets are trying to do here with your Luis Severino signing, with your Sean Manaea signing. So they can definitely go that route as well. And the last point I wanted to make, I was looking on Fangraphs actually about the 2024 New York Mets depth chart. I didn't see Joey Lucchesi anywhere on there. I'm not sure if they just forgot him. He's not in the rotation. He's not in the bullpen outlook. I'm not sure what's going on there. So I'm kind of curious in terms of where they're going to utilize Joey Lucchesi. For me, he's the perfect option if you're going with a six-man rotation to slot him in at the sixth spot, but he's also that perfect long relief type man in the bullpen. It's going to be a crowded bullpen, a lot of options, especially with all these depth signings. So I just wanted to point that fact out there because, like I said, I have no idea what the Mets' plans is in terms of using Joey Lucchesi, keeping in mind that they also have a Jose Buto who looked pretty decent down the stretch last season, and big drip Tyler McGill. Shout out David in the chat was saying that earlier on as well. So like I said, a lot of options for the Mets. Are they good options right now? Are they mediocre? That's up to you all to decide, but a lot of options for the New York Mets moving.
Yeah, and let's combine these two last topics. DH bats are too expensive, apparently, if it's $10 million budget. We talked about the DH bats that we know: Turner, Martinez, Soler. We talked until the cows come home. It's repetitive at this point. So let's just go right to the Vientos over Bader because I think this is important. We just talked about Bader being in a trade. If the Marlins are going to trade Luzardo to the Mets, Bader will be in that deal. I think it's hard to believe, and it's probably going to be Bader. You said Parada. I think Parada's expendable as well, and maybe one of the lower level prospects that are a shortstop as well. Or maybe I give him even another top 10, depending on who it is. I think Gilbert and Williams are the two that are untouchable right now. But yeah, I think. Have you noticed the Mets have been throwing Vientos onto their social media pages a lot on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, everywhere. Like everywhere you see him with a Doc Gooden shirt, you see him working out, you see him working with Lindor. That's why I've been putting Vientos all over the place. You know what they haven't shown? Bader. And I think that tells a lot of what they think that they thought. Remember when I believe it was last year when they were really concerned that Vientos kind of wasn't giving it his all, and they kind of brought him back down to the minors and had a conversation with him. And then ever since then, he seemed to have been working harder, doing what he needs to do to be that player that he thinks he is. And I think the Mets jump Vientos over Bader right now, in my opinion. And I don't say that with a grain of salt. I seen it with just showing what the Mets have been showing lately. I think they believe that Vientos is the better bat. And if they have to try Vientos at third base and think that if they can work him out a little bit more, working with Lindor, I think that was planned by the Mets. And he can get a little bit better defensively at third base. I think his bat could be very appealing to us. He could be a 20 home run guy. You see his power. Chris, I know you got to go, so let me get your a couple of minutes here with your opinion about that. I think they're really pushing Vientos to be the third baseman at this point after the Mauricio injury. I don't know why. I just got that feeling. Just what they've been showing on their social media pages. It's been all about Vientos and nothing about Bader. So what do you think about that?
I mean, it really does depend on what they do. Like if they make that move for Luzardo, like we just talked about, and if they ship Brett Beatty off, then what are their other options at third base? It has to be Vientos. But I think there's a world where if the Mets are not going to go after DH, and all the reports that we're seeing, especially from Martino, are true, where the starting pitching might see a trade and then the bullpen the rest of the way, and they don't get a DH, then those two guys are going to be in the lineup by default more days than not. Vientos will probably platoon at the DH spot with DJ Stewart, and then you'll have Brett Beatty starting at third base, and you can have a whole merry-go-round between those three for those two spots in the lineup. That is a scenario that we can definitely see. Now, is that the best scenario? No, I've been talking about Justin Turner for so long on my channel. I think Justin Turner is a guy you can definitely sign up there for about $15 million. He's going to be cheaper than Teoscar Hernandez. I think Joel was mentioning Teoscar in the chat. He signed for 23.5 with the Dodgers. But like I said, that just doesn't seem plausible now, knowing what we know with these reports. So I agree with you, Vientos. We've been seeing a lot more of him. The public eye has been seeing a lot more of Vientos than Beatty, but I just find it hard to believe that all of his defensive mistakes, all of his defensive I guess lackings, his footwork is really bad. I find it hard to believe that he fixed that in a 2-week session or whatever it was with Francisco Lindor. So like I said, if the Mets have been prioritizing defense, they prioritize Harrison Bader to improve the defense. It wouldn't make sense to put Vientos out there at third base. Like that would contradict everything that David Stearns has been preaching with these signings, these defensive signings. So I don't see it personally. I think Brett Beatty's going to be that guy. And like I said, Brett Beatty's not the sure-handed third baseman that we all thought we were getting when he was coming up, but he's damn sure better at third base than Mark Vientos. I firmly believe that, which is why I think that Brett Beatty will be the starting third baseman unless a trade were to happen with Brett Beatty's name in.
Yeah, and you know what? If Nimmo can get better defensively, Pete Alonso can get better defensively, McNeil, Vientos can. It's just a matter of, are you willing to take that chance? Nelson, Vientos, or Beatty at third base. If both of them are on the team, do you think Vientos is the DH, Beatty is the third baseman?
Yeah, without a doubt. I don't think Beatty, not Beatty. I don't think Vientos is a third baseman. I don't think Vientos belongs on the field. I just really, truly don't. He looked horrible wherever you put him last year. If we see Vientos, and we very well might, it's going to be at DH. If we don't sign a DH, Vientos is going to get most of the reps there. I truly believe that. Even if we trade Beatty, they're going to play Joey Wendell at third base because Stearns values defense. And you're not going to put a butcher on the field when all you've been preaching all offseason is defense, defense, defense. So if we trade Brett Beatty and a trade isn't in the works, another trade or in the same deal, we get a third baseman as well, we're probably going to play Joey Wendell at third. And that's what you're going to see. You're going to see Joey Wendell and the all gold glove defense of the Mets. And hopefully that means we have a legitimate rotation at that point. And maybe that'll carry us. But I don't think there's a world where Vientos sees the field unless it's like emergency type situations. I like the kid. His bat, maybe he figured some stuff out. Maybe we will see him at DH, which some people are okay with. Some people want him to be the DH.
Last year they did.
Yeah. So yeah, if we see him where he's going to be the DH, but he ain't playing third base. Like I don't see that at all. If Beatty's still here, Beatty's going to be there for better or worse. We'll see what happens. Listen, Beatty, people are sleeping on the fact that Beatty was a highly regarded prospect. He in the minors looked the part. So for a guy that's played less than a full season's worth of games, I know we're ready to give up on him, but he might actually still be a valuable piece of this team. And if Brett Beatty finds himself and actually becomes a 270, 20 home run, 80, 90 RBI guy, like that's not out of the realm of possibility. And if that happens, then this team is going to be in a way better spot than any of us expected. Same thing with like a Starling Marte. We're all writing him off, but he's only one season removed from having a really good year.
He looked good in DR tonight. He just got another base hit. He's looking good with the bat.
Yeah, I'm not saying I believe he's gonna be be back. I'm not saying that. Don't quote me on that. But it's not out of the realm of possibility that he bounces back a little bit. So there's reasons to believe that this team, just based on players improving that are on the roster right now, can be way better. It's just, yeah, you're taking a chance. I said it in my video earlier today. This is a team where if everything goes wrong, it could be another 70-something win team. But if everything breaks right, you could see a upper 80s win team, and you could very well be in the wild card and be in the playoffs. And as we all know, once you make the playoffs, anything can happen.
Yep.
And if you're winning, who knows what we do at the trade deadline to improve the team as well. So listen, the 2015 Mets going into 2015 did not look like a World Series team. Nobody would have told you that team was going to the World Series. So I'm not saying this is the 2015 Mets, the 2024, but I'm just saying anything is possible. So to write off this team and this season already, I think that's a mistake because there's just as good a chance that this team can be actually solid and good as there is that they can be horrible. Like I just don't think that we're seeing like some fans talk like this is a 60-something win team, and it's not. Let's give them some credit.
Yeah, I want to add something on before we leave. I want to add a couple points to what we all just said there. One, to Nelson's credit, we are going to win more games than 75 games last season. I see us anywhere between 80 and 82 right now, even given the way that we're all talking about this roster being mediocre. I see that fact holding up into fruition. Two, as much as I crap on Vientos and his defense, I do think that he's going to be a capable power hitter, whether it's with the New York Mets or anywhere else that he finds himself. If the Mets do trade him in the near future, I do think he has the capability of hitting anywhere between 20 to 25 home runs. To your credit, Rob, as well. You also said that. I believe in that. He has really good pop. The strikeouts are an issue, obviously, but we've seen that pop in the major leagues down the stretch of last season. So I firmly do believe that. And three, I've said it before. I just saw in the comment section again. I said this maybe like 5 hot stove lives ago. This is the year. If you do not trade Beatty for a premier pitcher like Luzardo, that you have to give Beatty the shot at third base because he was always in the Mets' long-term plans, and Vientos was just kind of that add-on, that throw-in. Like, if he pans out, he pans out. If not, that's fine. Beatty is the guy that if he doesn't pans out, that hurts you a lot more, but it really doesn't because guess who you have coming up behind him? Mr. Jet Williams, or even maybe a Luis Angel if they move him to third base, which I don't see happening. I think it's maybe a Jet Williams type of thing. But like I said, you have a reinforcement coming up right behind him, so you need to get the scoop on him, and that's why I don't think Vientos is going to take Brett Beatty's position away. And I don't think this is a conversation to have because I think Brett Beatty, the stars were aligned for Brett Beatty to be that future third baseman for the New York Mets. He hasn't shown it so far, but if we're rolling with Vientos at DH, you can be rest assured that Brett Beatty is going to be playing third base. I promise you that. The Mets need to see what they have with him. And if they don't have anything with him and he continues to prove himself to not be that starting third baseman caliber for the New York Mets moving forward, then next offseason, when, let's face it, everything is going to get really real for the New York Mets in terms of spending, in terms of an actual roster construction to be a contender, then Brett Beatty is going to be the first one out the door via trade for peanuts if the Mets have to, for peanuts, because they're going to have to clear roster spots. If they have to sell low on him, this season wasn't the season to do so, although I would agree with it if it gives you a return like Jesus Luzardo, like we just said. But next season, their hand is going to be forced if he doesn't prove anything. And like Nelson said, I'm not giving up on Brett Beatty. We've seen 120 game sample size with him so far in his career. It's not out of the realm of the possibility at all that he comes back and proves everybody wrong. And it's not out of the realm of possibility at all that we still do have that future third baseman. We need to see a lot of improvement. He's got a hell of a mountain to climb, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. And that's what I got to
And you know what? Beatty didn't really have pressure on him. Let's be honest. There was nobody behind him that, threatened his position, his job. Vientos wasn't the guy. He knew that. Everybody knew that. Now there's pressure on him because he knows he doesn't do his job. There's Jet Williams around the corner, Luis Angel Acuna right behind him. There's pressure. So, and I think that's another thing too. The pressure's on these guys. There's pressure on Pete Alonso for a contract. There's a lot of pressure on these guys. This core has not won together, along with the young kids. The young kids got to step it up. Brett Beatty's got to step up. Francisco Alvarez got to, do a little bit more with the average, but the power's there. These guys got to step up. And the core, this is the year for the core to prove to the organization, to prove to Stearns and the Mets brass that they are the guys to keep around long-term as a group, as a core. Or you know what? Blow the whole effing thing up. You might as well get rid of Pete Alonso because the fact of the matter is this core that's been together for 5-6 years now, everybody got a contract except for Alonso. And I have no problem with Stearns saying, hey, listen, Alonso's got to prove it for the contract he really is looking for. This core's got to win. If you win 70 games next year, why keep this core together? You haven't done nothing with this core. If the core doesn't perform, this team is not going to win, no matter regardless who you're going to put around them. If the core doesn't perform and do it in the biggest moments, you're wasting your time because they're going to blow it up. And you know what?
Sorry, Rob. I'm sorry to cut you off. Because I have this thought in my mind. I'm just like that's making too much sense to me what you're saying. But the only rebuttal I have that Pete Alonso is that if you do want to blow it up, and if they don't prove that they're the legit core that can win you a World Series, you're essentially losing Pete Alonso for nothing in the offseason, right?
Well, I think the Mets are going to, like I said, I said this in the last hot stove. The Mets are going through the wait and see approach in the first half. If they have a bad first half, Alonso's getting traded. There is no reason why to string him along and keep him on a bad team after the deadline and not get nothing for him. Even if you do sign him, at least you can try to get something back for a good package back. And there's a pretty good chance that Pete Alonso is going to make one more call with Boris to make the final offer for the Mets. So I see it as a wait and see approach in the first half. That's what I was talking, not about the whole season where
I feel you. I was thinking that
the first half part I'm talking about. But yeah, and I see like this before we end it and get your final thoughts. The fact of the matter is, this is a prove it year, not only to the fan base, and you know what? The fan base are going to be blinded by Pete Alonso, homegrown. I'm sick and tired of people talking about that. I can give a shit if you're homegrown. Is it nice? Yes. Do what I love it? Yes. Right? But you also have to win. And you can't keep on keeping this core together because you like him. And you get emotional because he's Pete Alonso and you love the polar bear and everything like that. The fact of the matter is, if I can get Juan Soto in here and he helps us win a championship over Pete Alonso, I do that. And I think, and yes, he's not a first baseman, but the fact of the matter is, you got to change his core at some point when you don't win. If it's not working together, you got to change it up. Yes, it sucks. Nobody wants to hear it, and nobody's probably going to say it. I will. You got to change this core if you don't win. If you don't like what I say, then you're using your emotion and not your freaking brain. Right? Take the emotion out of it, just like the emotion at the trade deadline in last season, where everybody got so emotional. Yet, a week and a half later, everybody calmed down and realized it was the right move. Chris, your final thoughts. Nelson, your final thoughts. And we'll finish up the stream.
I think this was a complete stream. I think we basically covered everything that we should be covering about this team in an objective lens, given all the reports and where we're at this offseason. I think that this is a productive discussion, and we're finally starting to see this plan materialize, and we're finally able to sort of, help everyone understand in the comment section viewing this, how the Mets are going about this. So like I said, I don't have any sort of other information that we haven't said early on the stream. I think it was great points by all three of us. We did a great job. And like I said, we're starting to see this offseason progress. Now, there's still a lot of free agents left to be signed. There's still a lot of trade candidates left to be sought after and sort of maneuvered for. But this offseason might disappoint a lot of people, and I think we should be prepared for that. That's worst case scenario. Best case scenario, Andy Martino's wrong, and the Mets truly do stick to their word and put a competitive playoff caliber team out there in 2024. Not a division winning team, but a playoff caliber team, which is what David Stearns has promised us. Other than that, great stream. Like I said, I appreciate you having me on. Sorry I have to run here and cut things a little short. I'm not in my usual setup today, but next or tomorrow, I should say, True Mets Talk podcast live at 7:30. I'll be joined by Dan Bartels. Follow him over on X, Dan Bartels 2. We'll be going live discussing the Mets, and then I'll be on with my usual co-host on Friday, Interstate Mets Report, going down at 3 p.m. on Friday. So subscribe to the channel, almost at 400 subscribers, right around 387 right now. So I definitely appreciate it. Hitting a lot of milestones on the channel. I definitely appreciate everyone's support. Thank you so much, and hit that thumbs up like always. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. Nelson, final thoughts.
I just want to make a quick point about Vientos and Bader again. I really like what I've seen out of Vientos this offseason. It looks like he's working hard. I love the fact that he went and worked with Lindor. And one thing that I want to see out of Bader, whether it's before spring training or at spring training, I want to see Bader glued to Lindor. he needs to soak up that knowledge. He needs a guy to really be in his ear. And I think Lindor can do that. And I think if we see that, that'll help him a ton. Because like I said, I'm just not ready to give up on him. And another point, to your point, like I really think if the Mets get off to a slow start and come trade deadline time, things aren't working out, we are going to see a lot of Alonso trade talks. And we're going to see talks about a lot of these guys that we signed to 1-2 year deals. They're going to be on the trade block too. Like if they are worth a damn, if they're doing anything, and they can bring value, we're going to see another sell-off where we're looking to get pieces and build for 2025. One thing that we didn't talk about that Stern said during his question and answer session at that Zoom conference, he made it a point to bring up the starters in the minors. I truly think he believes in these kids, and he believes we're going to see some of them this season. So just look out for that, because I think I've said it once, I'll say it 50,000 times. I really think, like, listen, they're not all going to pan out, but there's some guys in the minors in the pitching that are really going to help this team. And it's going to change the outlook of this team going forward. Like, I think people are sleeping on a lot of these kids. I know they know the big names and whatnot, but trust me, there's something there with these guys. And a few of them are really going to be a big help.
Yep.
And regardless of what happens in 2024, 2025 looks promising, just because of all the young talent that is going to be right on the doorstep. And that's on the pitching and hitting side. There are a ton of guys that are going to work their way up the minors this year and be knocking on the door in 2025. So that's going to be exciting to see. And plus, we're going to have a lot more money to spend. We showed the payroll going into next year as far as what we have committed, and it's like $100 million less than what it was this year. So the Mets are going to have money to spend next offseason. It's going to be interesting, but don't sleep on 2024. Other than that, thanks for watching, everybody. Please, if you can subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, I appreciate it. Make sure you watch Interstate Mets Report on Friday. And thanks again, you guys, and have a great night.
Absolutely. And my final thoughts is what I said a little bit earlier, a couple minutes ago. You root for the laundry. You root for what the name on the chest. You might buy the jersey for the name on the back, but you always root for the name on the chest. It's just that simple. We always do. And I'm sick and tired of people just falling in love with a player because they're homegrown. But if that player doesn't help, right? I mean, people are going crazy over Luis Guillorme. Are you freaking kidding me? Like, come on, guys. Like, the fact of the matter is, root for the jersey on the chest and you'll be a lot happier, because you're going to get disappointed 9 times out of 10 because these players usually don't stick around, especially in the world of free agency now. There's no loyalty anymore. Why should we be loyal to the players? Be loyal to the team in the front of the jersey. With that said, everybody have a great night. Another Mets hot stove in the books. Nelson, Chris, always great having you guys on. Mets Roundtable, back and better than ever. We'll see how it goes, guys. Hopefully, we get some good news in regards to acquisitions. Have a good night, guys. As always, let's go Mets. Have a great night, guys.
Let's go Mets. See y'all.
To meet the Mets. Oh, they're hollering, they're cheering, and they're jumping in their seats. Where do they go? To meet the Mets. All the fans are true to the orange and blue. So hurry up and come on down. 'Cause we got ourselves a ball club, the Mets of New York Town.